Welcome to ArtHouse Radio. I'm Troy. Brian will be joining me to talk about this week's film, the documentary by Prime, Val, starring Val Kilmer. And when you talk about Val Kilmer, you kind of got to talk about Jim. You got to ride that snake, you know. He was Jim. I've seen that many times, and I love that movie. This is going to sound really shallow, but I haven't seen Val Kilmer in a while, and sometimes it's shocking to see someone, not just, I don't know if it's shocking, I shouldn't say that. You know, we haven't seen someone in 15, 20 years, they look a little bit older, but also because when they get, sometimes if they're sick, like he had throat cancer, it kind of speeds up the process. So, and I say that, but I think also he has some work done. And so that makes it, that's probably really what I'm talking about. Not judging, whatever. But it didn't really look like Val Kilmer. That's what I'm trying to say. But we all age. Not all of us get work done. Some of us don't need it. But I thought it was great. Fantastic. You go through, you don't realize how much stuff this guy's done, and that, you know, from the beginning, when they talk about his interest is making films with his brothers when he's like very young, and was in theater, and you know, I already liked the guy, not just for Tombstone and well, it's a peach of a hand, you know, that stuff, and then you know, The Doors, of course. Top Gun I've never seen, so I can't speak to that, but definitely other things. You just forget how much stuff he's done, how much stuff he's been in, and I kind of like when you see scenes where actors are, they say difficult to work with, but really they just kind of care about what's happening in there, talking about the process, and you can hear clips in the documentary of him, I don't know what movie it was, but sort of arguing with the director. He and some other famous actors having trouble with the director, and it's really fascinating. It's really done well. I don't know if it's great, but it's very good. And if you like Val Kilmer, I think you'll enjoy this. And you know, you're just when you watch someone who's gone through these transformations of not just of the career, but also of health and all that, you kind of watch it and you're always reminded of the fragility or the mortality that we have to deal with. I don't know if have to deal with, but that's baked into our existence, you know, and you think about it, and you look at this guy who's, you never see pictures of him smoking, by the way, but I guess that's how he got sick. But, you know, he's always just kind of acting, appreciating all the words. Like even making this video right now, I'm not clearly an actor because I'm not aware of all the movements, you know, all the facial things, you know. But when you watch him, and you could see there's a part where he repeats lines over and over again, like he's practicing them. And one of the things I loved in the movie is he would practice, he would make movies. Like if he was auditioning for a role, he would make the movie, like a short version of it, and he would do the character, or he would sometimes do the character in like 3 or 4 different styles, which I thought was really fascinating. So, all right, you're up.
So yeah, I watched the Val documentary, and I thought it was pretty amazing. Same as you, Troy. And you know, we grew up, Troy and I especially grew up watching Val in a lot of classic movies. You know, I remember watching Top Secret, Top Gun, Under the Doors, and Willow, and Heat, and so on, and Tombstone. These are classic movies, and he's just one of those method actors that really take it to another level. There's just classic lines and scripts that, you know, that he just kind of just embraces the character in. Heat is a particular one that stands out to me. Of course, Tombstone, he doesn't even look like Val. Like, he just looks like Doc Holliday. That's who I think of as Doc Holliday, you know, in real life. That's how good he is. So I thought it was a really fascinating documentary. One of the things that, and you mentioned this, Troy, one of the things that really stood out to me was in the beginning of the documentary when they would talk about growing up in Chatsworth, California, which I live right next door to it right now, Chatsworth, and I live in Northridge. So it's a 5-minute drive away, and him and his brother would grow up, and his dad had this real estate business, and they had tons of land. They would just go out and make movies all the time. I thought that was fascinating, and it kind of makes me want to go out next door and see kind of the land that they were, you know, developing their careers on early on. So I don't know. I just found that really relatable, really interesting. And yeah, I would definitely recommend going back and seeing some of his movies because it was. And the Mark Twain thing, I had heard about that, and I think he won some awards for it. And he completely disappears into that character as well, Mark Twain. And none of us know what Mark Twain really sounded or even maybe even looked like, but that's what I'm associating him with. So Mark Twain, that's what I think of when I think of Mark Twain. When I think of Jim Morrison, I think of him in The Doors. When I think of Doc Holliday, the same thing. He's so good at disappearing into characters and developing them in his own way that it's just so believable and so real, so visceral. So I really enjoyed it. It was a good kind of takeaway. And then all the back end kind of filming they did with all the fellow actors he grew up with working in the industry, like Sean Penn and Kevin Bacon and so on. But that was pretty interesting. So yeah, definitely give it a read and or give it a watch, and it's pretty good. All right, thanks.
So you mentioned that Val Kilmer grew up, I don't remember the name of the town, but it's close to Northridge, you said. And it just got me thinking, like, I wonder, LA and New York are basically, they're kind of like the cultural, they get referred to as cultural capitals for certain areas of American culture, film and celebrityism, whatever. I don't know. I would be careful because it's almost like self-appointed. I mean, we might agree that they certainly hold a lot of cultural weight, but cultural significance and importance for whom would be a question. But, and sorry, one more thing. They also are composed of a lot of people from around the country. So it's not like they're born and bred New Yorkers, they're born and bred Los Angelinians, whatever the phrase, Angelonians phrase is. So they're just like an aggregate of people from Oklahoma and Ohio and Michigan and Florida and Texas and Washington State. But having said that, Val Kilmer grew up in there, in those centers in LA. I wonder what influence that has on someone in terms of, like a sort of a interest in film or an interest in art or acting or theater. Now, clearly there's, I don't know how many people are in Los Angeles, metro, 20 million maybe. So I would imagine the vast majority of those people are just trying to work wherever to scrape by to get those cans of Pringles to feed their face on a Saturday night. But there has to be some influence on someone who grows up in the Valley or near Venice Beach or wherever it is, like Val Kilmer and his family. I mean, for example, I shot a lot of video, a lot of home video. We didn't really make movies necessarily. A couple of weird things with the video camera back in the 80s, like weird little shots. But if we had all grown up in Los Angeles, I wonder what sort of influence that would have had on us, like it did on Val Kilmer and his brothers and maybe even their friends. Like, is there a difference? There has to be a difference culturally, but I wonder what increase there is in the likelihood of being interested in making film because obviously LA is maybe, I don't know if the capital, but it's got to be up there in terms of film centers, film cultures in the world. So it's interesting to think about him growing up there, and what sort of influence growing up in the city or in the area proper had on him.